Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us online today. This morning, I'd like to talk more specifically about establishing a research partnership with the Center for Research in Occupational Safety and Health, and otherwise referred to by its acronym CROSH. We are a student-based research center, and today is really all about our students. Like Sandra said, we're going to be letting them showcase their research projects, their internships, and everything that they've been doing in the past couple of years. So I'm going to start the presentation by taking some time to outline the different levels of students you can partner with, including their research strengths. Then I want to outline our research areas of expertise for everybody who doesn't know. As a research institution, our approach to research. I'm going to give some examples of applications of our research without going into too much detail or stealing anybody's thunder. We're then going to discuss all the possible options for partnership with our students and research center. And finally, I'm going to discuss research project timelines and expectations. So as we already mentioned, if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box or use the Q&A feature so you don't forget them. And I'm definitely going to welcome all the questions at the end of the presentation this morning. So let's get started with the evolution of a researcher. Sandra did a great introduction. When someone says, Katie's a postdoctoral researcher for CROSH, what on earth does that actually mean? My parents and my family don't really know what my title means or what I actually do for a living. So the gold standard for a researcher is to become a tenure track professor. That's kind of the goal. And so why do researchers want this as their job? Just like everybody else, researchers want autonomy, the ability to make their own decisions about day-to-day processes in their job. Sometimes this is referred to as academic freedom. They want some job security. So tenure track professors are unionized, and often this leads to a high level of job security. And then selective mentorship. So everyone wants the ability to choose who they work with. Researchers aren't any different. They want to choose their grad students. They want to work on research projects with topics they enjoy and are interested in. So there are many steps to becoming a tenure track professor and principal investigator researcher. So university students start out as undergraduates or undergrads. This is their first 4-year program where a thesis might be required in their final year. A thesis is where you will learn how to conduct a research project or study soundly. Then students interested in pursuing research further will do a 2-year master's degree with a thesis. This will typically lead, they will typically lead 1 to 2 research projects to complete their thesis here. And then if they really love it, they'll become PhD students, or you might hear this as doctoral students. And this is a 4-year research intensive program where they're responsible for anywhere from 3 to 6 research projects. Then there's this really funny phase between finishing your education and becoming a professor in academia. They term this a postdoctoral researcher. And you may also see this referred to as a postdoctoral fellow. We are really trying to phase out the term fellow to use a more gender neutral term, researcher, as postdocs can also be female. And postdoc researchers are solely focused on research and have the freedom to work on whichever projects they want. Typically, these are the ones that are associated with grant money. Then a door might open and you become an assistant professor. Also researchers who are responsible for teaching and supervising research students. So all of these steps underneath them. Early career professors have a lot of teaching requirements in addition to their research. And then finally, obviously the tenure track professors, again, responsible for teaching and supervising all of these phases below them while maintaining their teaching loads. So at CROSH, our undergraduate students typically come from the kinesiology, health promotion, nursing, computer science, and some engineering programs. Laurentian offers mechanical, mining, and chemical engineering. As I mentioned, undergraduate students are just starting their research careers, but they'll already have a variety of strengths in research. So they'll be very familiar with evidence or research-based literature. They will know how to find and synthesize literature with some reporting on that. If you have data that needs to be grouped, graphed, described, these students are also capable of doing this. With supervision, these students can help with small projects, research design. This just means that they can help design projects with 2 to 3 variables. As a research center, we do focus on distributing knowledge transfer and exchange materials, or KTE materials, just to make sure research findings are understandable outside of peer-reviewed journal publications. So for the most part, our students can help do this, and if they can't, we do have the resources available for them to be able to do this for you. Our master's students are enrolled in a variety of programs as well, including human kinetics, interdisciplinary health, nursing, Indigenous relations, engineering science, and science communications. Master's students normally must have a research-specific component, as now their thesis is a really high percentage of their degree requirements. In order to complete their degree, they will have to lead and complete 1 to 2 of their own research projects or experiments. Master students' strengths are now that they can design experiments with guidance and supervision from the professors. They can do on-site data collection, again, with some guidance and supervision. For data analysis, master students are continuously building on their abilities from their undergrad. And now their statistical analysis skills are advanced to where they can normally isolate some variables, do some general linear modeling, and post-hoc analysis. They are also starting to write peer-reviewed journal publications, and they do this with guidance and supervision. And then they can present their research, typically again with some guidance and supervision. Our doctoral or PhD students are enrolled in programs like human kinetics, rural and northern health. We have human studies, and engineering, biomolecular, or material science. So during this time, these students are responsible for anywhere from 3 to 6 research projects or experiments. The number of projects is extremely dependent on the scope or size of each project. And PhD students are typically trying to finish their degree in about 4 years. So our doctoral students are now capable of designing their own experiments. Typically, they'll just need help from the supervisors to ensure the project scope and just make sure the projects don't get too big. They're still achievable within a reasonable time frame. So they can complete the ethics applications, which are a must for any university-based research project. So for the master's and undergraduate students that we just talked about, their supervisor does a lot of this and helps them with the applications. PhD students can also do their own data collection without supervision. And again, their data analysis techniques are continuing to advance. So they're starting to get into more statistical modeling and variable isolation. And they write peer-reviewed journal publications on their own. And normally they can now present their research to multiple audiences. So from specific science-based audiences on their research topic to the frontline workers with the application of their research. And last but not least, postdoctoral researcher is a person who has completed their doctoral degree and is looking to begin their academic career. As such, they have completed all the necessary training to conduct research projects completely independently. Postdoctoral researchers continue to work as a part of a larger group, so in this case, CROSH, and conduct research on specified projects. So with the goal is always to further prepare them to become principal investigators or junior faculty members. Aside from being able to conduct our own experiments from start to finish, we are now also able to meet with partners and do grant writing. So the professors trust us to do that by ourselves. At CROSH, the postdoctoral researchers do consult with the heads of our research programs, as I'm going to outline, just to make sure the research is always staying relevant to the occupational health and safety needs of the industries. So if we go back to the evolution of a researcher, and now we assign approximate times to class or teaching, research, and administration duties. Undergrads have a lot of class time with smaller amounts of research time, typically. Masters have high class and graduate teaching time, and they're about half and half between teaching and research. PhDs have half class and graduate teaching time and a full research time designated to their projects. And then you'll find that the postdoctoral researchers are kind of the hidden gems of the research world. And I'm not just saying that because I am one, but at this point in their career, by no fault of their own, they do not necessarily have any teaching requirements, and they aren't normally allowed to assist with other governance positions at their institution, just because they're not part of the faculty unions yet. So these positions are solely designed to conduct research projects, and we are lucky enough at CROSH to have a couple of fully funded postdoctoral researchers, and they have the added benefit of sometimes they'll get teaching experience when possible. Assistant professors have huge responsibilities when it comes to their class and teaching time, as well as trying to do their research and their required administration for their research grants and students. And then tenure track professors, they do have a little bit of a reduced class or teaching time, just because by now their courses have probably been prepared and they're just updating them more regularly. So they can increase their research abilities because of this, but now their administration time also increases because now they're responsible for the other 5 steps below them. So I think now we can all understand the different levels of researchers, and this is the foundation kind of for understanding which level would be best for partnership depending on the size, type, and time for the research project that you'd like to complete and partner with us on. So at CROSH, our principal investigators are interested in practical research for mitigating occupational health and safety hazards, as well as improving overall workplace wellness. So I'd now like to focus on our research areas of expertise as a research center. We have 3 main research areas. One of them being human factors and ergonomics, or HFE. In this research area, we have expertise in musculoskeletal disorders, vibration reduction strategies, and heavy equipment line of sight. Our research lead for human factors and ergonomics is Dr. Catherine Sinden. So Dr. Sinden works out of the kinesiology department at Lakehead University. Generally, her research areas could be categorized under applied ergonomics, occupational performance. She does knowledge translation and gender impacts on work and health. And most recently, she's working on developing resources to support firefighter mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. A second research area that we have is occupational health and wellness, or OHW. Within this umbrella, we study mental health, sleep, quality of work life, and safety culture. And Dr. Judith Horgan is our research lead for occupational health and wellness. And Dr. Horgan is a full-time faculty with the School of Nursing at Laurentian University. Her most recent research revolves around nurses' health and quality of work life in Northeastern Ontario, which in short encompasses evaluating their work environments, any psychosocial factors, stress, and shift work. Our third research area is occupational physiology and environment, or OPE. In this research area, we have expertise in fatigue, heat stress, nutrition, and diesel particulate matter. So Dr. Dominic Gagnon is the research lead for Occupational Physiology and Environment. And Dr. Gagnon is a full-time faculty member with the School of Kinesiology and Health Sciences at Laurentian University. His most recent research involves evaluating how physical activity with varying low to moderate intensity workloads affects the human body's metabolic and oxygen functions. So overall, our research center focuses on these three main areas of research. So these research areas, as you saw, are not totally independent. There's often a lot of crossover between the streams and depending on the research project. And so the fact that we have three research areas does not mean that we don't do research outside of these areas, but this means that we currently have the expertise and the equipment to support the research in these areas. So at CROSH, we use a field to lab to field approach, where we identify problems in the field with measurement or assessment. We return to the lab to help find solutions through simulations. So we're just trying not to cost anybody any money, impede any workers, making sure we're not taking anybody's time to find the solutions. Then we return to the field and we reevaluate the solutions in the actual field setting to make sure that they work. So depending on the student researcher available to complete the research projects, this approach could be entirely for a PhD student. So they could do their entire PhD could be based on doing field to lab to field. Or it could be split between master's and undergraduate students to have opportunities to contribute at all the different stages for an overall project. And partnership with CROSH and its students also gives you access to the specialized equipment that we have at the university. Our research center has a mobile research lab that can be taken on site to conduct field measurements. So this lab gives researchers a kind of a designated space to set up their measurement equipment on the workers, have workers fill out any surveys, conduct training, or we can give toolbox talks in here where there's a TV and everything to go through any information. It's also equipped more specifically to provide a space for clinical measurements, such as blood samples. So as for laboratory equipment for workplace simulation on campus, we do have a robotic vibration platform. We use this for studying vibration transmissibility, musculoskeletal loading, vibration-induced injury. We also do motion analysis and PPE evaluation. We have an environmental chamber, which can simulate temperature and humidity conditions from about -20 to plus 35 degrees Celsius. So this allows us to study the effects of things like fatigue, heat stress, nutrition, physiological stressors, and sleep. We use a variety of virtual reality platforms to study eye tracking, line of sight, proximity detection, cognitive workloads, and human factors and equipment operation. And then we also have a metabolic cart, which allows us to do breath by breath metabolic analysis and pulmonary function tests. So we can study exercise and occupational fitness, spirometry, and weight management. So what does this actually look like? I'm going to review a couple of example applications without going into the specifics, because really the students are going to cover the specifics of their work in all of their presentations today. So this is the robotic motion platform, or the rotopod, and it's used to simulate vibration exposures. So for instance, we can take, or we have taken field measurements on underground heavy equipment, such as rock trucks. We returned to the lab where we'll simulate the field profile. So we'll make this exact, we'll make the rotopod here, simulate the exact profile that we took in the field. And then we can test different seat types for reducing whole body vibration exposure experienced by the worker. And this one is the environmental chamber right here. And it can recreate precise temperature and humidity conditions, like I said. This allows us to work with industry partners and equipment suppliers to study heat stress and identify solutions to mitigate heat stress factors. So we do a lot of research with wildland firefighters and evaluating their occupational fitness to actually perform their job functions while they're wearing all their equipment and in a hot environment. We also used virtual reality, or VR, to construct real life work environments. This allows us to simulate workplace vehicles. And so we can evaluate the interface design, do some proximity detection, test reaction times. So in this example here, the wearer is operating an LHD and their reaction times to see pedestrians and the number of collisions are being tested. We're also developing line of sight training using virtual reality. So this training ideally would allow the person wearing the VR glasses to be able to walk around different equipment and better understand whether they're in the operator's view or not. So with this type of research, it's our hope that this type of training exercise would actually help reduce the number of pedestrians struck by vehicles, which is applicable to many industries. And then we also have the ability to complete occupational fitness evaluations. So we have a body composition scale. It's not shown in the pictures, but it's otherwise known as the Tenure scale. So this allows us to assess not only a participant's weight, but also their fat mass, fat-free mass, muscle mass, and total body water. So in this image here on the right is the environmental chamber, which allows us to reproduce at the temperature and humidity of a workplace. And the computer and mask and hose setup that you see on the biker, all of that's the metabolic cart. So the metabolic cart is used to measure the oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide production of the participants, so whatever they're breathing in and out, while they are asked to perform a task that corresponds to a certain workload. So a real life kind of right now example of the use of a metabolic cart would be at rest for an ill patient, say suffering from COVID-19, and you take their measurements and it would allow you to set the ventilator more specifically for the patient. At our research center, we use the metabolic cart and body composition scale to conduct a comprehensive pulmonary function test. This will just help us measure the worker's cardiovascular fitness. And this allows for a better understanding of the caloric requirements for completing a physical task at the workplace. So now we've established the difference in researcher levels and our research center's areas of expertise. So you've probably all been starting to think about your research ideas, questions, possible applications for your workplace, but how can you actually partner with CROSH? So I'm going to outline the ways to partner with our students and researchers. We'll start with the specifics of smaller projects, such as internships, and work our way up to larger research grants. So let's start with the student internships. This year, with the immersion of the COVID-19 pandemic, our research center has had to make some changes. So we've transferred some travel dollars associated with what you saw our mobile lab to internships for our students. And this year we offered internships which cost the industry partners nothing. Our advisory board and University Advancement Office are continuously working to secure more funding to offer some of these at reduced prices to industry in the future. But essentially, if you have a project that you think can be done in 120 to 150 hours by any level of graduate student, so undergrad, master's, or PhD student, the industry partner contribution for a one semester internship is $3,000, all of which goes directly to the student. So these are smaller research projects that give the students an opportunity to both help and learn from the industry partners. And then the intellectual property from these can be retained by the partner, meaning it does not necessarily need to be published if not agreed upon upfront. So internships provide a learning and training experience for the CROSH students. Depending on their level, the students bring a variety of skills to these internships at organizations throughout Northern Ontario. So some of the internship projects from this year would include the analysis of COVID-19 controls and disease surveillance, WSIB Excellence Program Review, updating safe operating procedures and training manuals, assessing reliability of thermal detection equipment, leading ergonomic programs and workshops, and analyzing historical accident data. So in the photo, we have a master's student, Jose. She's using a workplace simulator in her internship for NORCAT. An internship which we're happy to report has led to full-time employment for Jose. Yay. And another form of internship is called the MyTax Accelerate. So the student researcher, which is a master's or PhD student at this point, is expected to work full-time for 4 to 6 months, 50% at the university and 50% at the workplace partners. So these cost the partner $7,500, and the investment is then doubled by MyTax, so that the researcher actually receives $15,000 over the 4 to 6 month period. They can typically do one project and from start to finish, and will have access to specialized equipment at the university. In this case, the intellectual property cannot be fully retained by the partner. The student researcher must be able to anonymously publish results. So when you see that last piece about in the tables here that I'm going to present about intellectual property being retained by partner, it's pretty fair to say that generally, if you are seeking government research dollars, this is not consulting where you can retain the intellectual property or the research results of the project. Government agencies kind of only fund research that can be disseminated to the public, and some of these agencies will actually specifically require researchers to publish the findings in open access peer-reviewed journals. There's another version of MyTax for postdocs. So this version is called Elevate. These cost a research partner a minimum of $30,000, depending on the project expectations. The researchers will minimally receive $55,000 in salary for a year, with another $5,000 available for equipment for them. The number of projects will totally depend on the scope and what's reasonable. So in your proposal, you have to make sure that you have a plan. And they will have access to specialized equipment from the university. Again, must be able to publish results. So overall, it's not an extremely expensive option for a company to receive a postdoc researcher to work full-time on projects for a year. So I'd like to change gears just a little bit here and discuss some of the scholarships. So NSERC is the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. They offer different versions of scholarships depending on the student level. So here you can see we've got the undergraduate, master's, PhD, and postdoc categories. Students apply for these with their thesis research projects or a research project in mind, and their chances of receiving these substantially increases with the support of industry partners. With the exception of the undergraduate research level, these scholarships cost companies absolutely nothing. These are not grants, these are scholarships, so it's zero commitment. What is required from an industry partner is assistance establishing the research project plan, and they need support letters outlining you are partnering with the student and their supervisors. As such, they will have access to your workplace and workers, and they have your full permission to publish their study results. These are not easy to get. The applications and student resumes must be top-notch. This is in no ways a guaranteed money, but it's extremely beneficial to have fully funded students, and they would need your support with industry partnered letters. So fully funded students can focus on their research and not have separate occupations where they're trying to cover the cost of school. There are also research grants. So these are larger applications to be completed with industry partners. And there are 3 major research grant agencies. So we have NSERC, which is Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, SSHRC, which is Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, and CIHR, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. So all these agencies have different funding priorities, and that's up to the researchers to know these and decide which one would be suitable for your applications. So these grants are normally applied for projects they can range from $30,000 to $1 million per year, where the industry partner is responsible for 33% or 50%, depending on the application. It's variable depending on which one you're applying to. You can incorporate multiple researchers at any level with a 1 to 5 year timeline on these. You can write them with multiple projects and objectives in mind, and access to specialized equipment from the university is definitely still granted in this case. And again, all of this research must be published in an open access forum. And so this is now part of the contractual agreements. And for those of you who have very clinical research-based interests, there is the Noama Grants. So Noama stands for Northern Ontario Academic Medicine Association. So these grants are designed to pair medical doctors or MDs with PhD and postdocs to complete a single research project in a year. So the maximum for these grants is about $50,000. And the last option I'd like to talk about are the CROSH seed grants. So these are $10,000 grants that are offered directly by CROSH with no required investment from industry partners. Obviously, the research grants are scored higher when there is an industry partner's financial support. And in the best case, there's collaboration to submit a larger research grant. So like the ones that I just outlined. So there are about 2 calls per year for a seed grant in each of our 3 research areas that we talked about. So normally we'll fund 6 projects per academic year. A CROSH member must be the principal investigator. 75% of this money goes to the students in salaries, a minimum of 75% in salaries and stipends. You can never exceed 25% in purchasing equipment. And an added benefit is obviously in-kind reviewing by the CROSH leadership team. So with these projects, they are reviewed by experts in the area and that before any of the materials are distributed. So here's an example of a CROSH seed grant project. The paper is still a work in progress. I'll talk about this one because I know it's not specifically being presented today. It was identified that recreational ski waxers are unsure of whether they need to wear a respirator or not. So while they're waxing the skis, there's no clear PPE standards for this occupation. And there are a lot of questions regarding the safety. So we ended up conducting, we were awarded a seed grant and ended up conducting a study to take air samples for respirable and inhalable particulate at the OUA, or Ontario University Athletics, the cross-country skiing championships. So the study was conducted by a master's student, Matt Felton, and it was supervised by myself and CROSH Assistant Director, Dr. Allison Goggins. The knowledge transfer material, including this trifold brochure on the slides, was created by Emily Tetzlaff, a doctoral student. So these projects are often a team effort and a variety of student levels can be involved. This trifold brochure is still a work in progress, but in essence, it's a way of summarizing the important findings. And we will be providing all this information back to the people who are doing the ski waxing, so back to the OUA and the Canada Cross Country Association. Additionally, the paper will be submitted for peer-reviewed publication, hopefully in the coming months. So just to summarize, there are pros and cons to grant money. So just so everyone's on the same page, the pros being the government actually often doubles or even triples your investment. Government funded research is to be published and made accessible to the public. Our institution research ethics board certificates are mandatory. So your workers' rights and anonymity are always maintained throughout the research process. Access to specialized measurement equipment with experienced personnel and technicians. Our data, technical reports, KTE materials, peer-reviewed journal publications are reviewed by specialists. So PhDs are higher in that research area, and that's all in kind. So all that administration time by the professors and tenure track professors, this is all their in-kind time to supervise all these and review everything. And the cons being, application submission does not guarantee grant money. So all of those things I talked about, it's not a guarantee. The only thing that is guaranteed is internships, if you make the investment, obviously. And often it takes 6 to 8 weeks for applications to be reviewed once they're submitted. So it's not a quick process by any means. All applications have different deadlines, so it's up to the researchers will know all of the deadlines for the applications, but it's not a one happens in September. All the applications are different. Research data is owned by both the institution and the industry partner. So overall, I would say the pros outweigh the cons, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to make sure everyone understands the expectations of research grant money. So the last thing I do want to touch on a little bit is project timelines and expectations. So we'll start with the project timelines. There are a few things I would like to explain regarding funded research timelines. These are not industry timelines. Money is not granted to anyone in 2 weeks or less, ever. Researchers need to show evidence of an industry partnership and a plan, typically. So with grant applications, there are a few steps before an award is actually granted. The research question needs to be developed, the research question needs to be developed and the application needs to be written. Then the online submission on the granting agency's platform needs to be completed. This is where all the documentation needs to be signed by both parties, and then revision by the granting agency happens. So this is at a minimum. Like I said, it's normally 6 to 8 weeks. The timeline to complete these first 3 steps is totally variable. We never underestimate the timeline of the online submissions either. It's a lot to do these. Before you're even starting to enter the purpose of the application, you have to fill out your entire everything that you've ever done, basically, to show record of your research abilities. So in the ideal world, the researcher would also be simultaneously, we're trying to find suitable students or student. This is also not an easy thing to do, as it will depend on the type of project and the proposed start dates. And a backup plan for the students if the grant money does not get awarded. We don't typically promise students any grant money until we have the awards. Additionally, the ethics applications will need to be written. Again, another online submission system, and then revision by our research ethics board, which is a little bit quicker. They'll take about a month. So all of this needs to happen before the project data collection can even begin from the university standpoint. So researchers try their best to make sure these 2 end lines meet, these 2 green end lines here meet, and there are no project delays. All of that being said, our research grant success as a center is pretty high. We do focus our research on real problems, and generally the funding agencies are always happy when the end goal is to protect a worker's life and improve their health. So if you want answers right now, CROSH also provides a variety of occupational health and safety related services to workplaces and industries in Northern Ontario. Our services are not like research. You can retain your company's intellectual property and results. However, this comes at an increased cost for use of the equipment and the technical expertise time. So a couple of services we do offer, they include that workplace simulator use, mobile research lab use, fitness assessments with the Metabolic Cart and Environmental Chamber. We do vibration exposure assessments, guidebook design, and knowledge transfer kits. Our knowledge transfer kits have been developed by a postdoctoral researcher, so Dr. Mallory Leduc. They're available for line of sight, fatigue, and vibration exposure. So each knowledge transfer kit there's included in there, there's safety meeting presentations and discussion questions on the 3 topics. There's leader's guides to help the instructor on the topic, posters to display to reinforce the safety message. And there's also some interactive technology for some hands-on learning, depending on which KTK or knowledge transfer kit you have. If you want any more information about these, obviously feel free to visit our website or contact us. So if we're to summarize what CROSH students and researchers can do for you and your company, in short, we can do evidence-based research and synthesize it with reporting. Data analysis, any graph, statistical analysis that you need. We do KTE development, we write technical reports, and then project design from start to finish. We can help with any data collection, analysis, making sure the research is put through peer-reviewed journal publication, and we can assist with all of the grant writing. So what do you need to partner with CROSH? So there are 3 things. First is a research question or a problem. You need to generally know what the occupational health and safety problem is you would like help tackling. So you don't necessarily need to know any specifics about how you're going to research something. That's what we specialize in. Keep in mind our 3 research areas of expertise where we already have the equipment and everything to do it. Then you need money available for partnership. At the end of the day, students got to eat. Our research center, along with the government, would like to support them. So matching money for partnership is also essential. And then the last thing you need is actually just the signing authority. So someone at your company needs to be responsible for working through the research grant process with us. And this also requires signing documentation on behalf of your company. Along with the signing authority, you also need permission for publication. So research centers cannot conduct research funded by government grant money without publishing the results of the study. Usually it has to be in open access journals. Research that includes government and institution funding requires complete transparency, and it's really focused on giving that research back to the public. So the overall goal of our research center is to ensure the occupational health and safety research we're conducting is relevant to the industries and frontline workers. This is not possible without a collaborative applied research approach where we'll identify the occupational health and safety concerns of the public. So our frontline workers, the management, supervisors, and occupational health and safety personnel to develop the research questions and problems to be researched and published. Then we also develop the knowledge transfer and exchange materials from the results with the overall goal of always disseminating the results back to the frontline workers, the supervisors, the managers, and the public. So I know I've presented you with a lot of information. I hope you found this presentation useful for how to partner with CROSH. There's lots of options to work on your research questions. And here's the research institution's contact information. I have also included the director, Dr. Sandra Darman, and associate director, Dr. Allison Godwin's contact information. So please, if you have any research questions or projects in mind, feel free to contact us here. So at this point, I'd like to remind everyone that all the presentations you'll see today are a result of the partnerships with CROSH and our students. So you'll see 15-minute presentations summarizing things like internship experiences and some research thesis results. There's also a 3-minute thesis or 3MT section at the end of the day. And if you haven't had a chance to ever experience one of these yet, it's basically students giving elevator pitches about research, their research in 3 minutes or less. So strongly encouraged to check out some of the presentations. Thank you everyone for listening this morning. And I'm going to invite any questions that you might have.